What is the best live streaming camera for churches? An important question, albeit not entirely easy to answer, and yet here you are, and here I am. So in this video, I'll share with you my favorite camera for church live stream setups, along with a number of alternative options that may actually be better for you, depending on a couple of important factors. Let's get started. Well, hey there, I'm Brady Shearer. This is Pro Church Tools, and we're here to help your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. If we're just meeting for the first time, consider subscribing. And if this video brings you clarity in any way, give it a thumbs up. And if your church is ready to take its next big leap, that's what we've built Nucleus for, the next generation of church software dedicated to seeing more next steps and life change at your church. With Nucleus, your church gets a modern website builder, sermon engine, giving platform, social media library, and unlimited stock footage. Thousands of churches use Nucleus, and you can get started for free with no credit card required. Just head to nucleus.church to start your 30-day free trial. Again, that link is nucleus.church, and you'll also find it in the description below. Now, let me say off the top here that there are a lot of moving pieces in the live stream setup, and the camera is just one of them. And if you don't have a firm grasp on how all of the other pieces fit together, well, that can negatively influence your church's buying decision here. So I put together a separate video called The Dummy's Guide to Church Live Streaming that walks you through step by step how a live stream setup is put together. It's linked in the description, so make sure to check that out if some of this is still newer to you. And by the way, if it is newer to you, welcome. You probably feel like you're in the deep end right now trying your best to figure this all out for your church, and it's a lot, but keep at it because we all started where you are right now, and you can do this. Now, back to my camera recommendations. My number one pick for churches, it's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. This is gonna cost you just about $1,295 USD, which is a steal considering what it can do. And I say this in a lot of my videos, but it is an amazing time to be a digital creator. The kind of gear that we now have at our fingertips for the cost, it's frankly amazing. And something like this camera right here would have cost at least 10 times more just 10 years ago. We are in the golden age right now. Of course, $1,200 American is still not a small sum of money. So if you're looking for an even cheaper option, I put together a separate video called The Cheapest Live Streaming Setup for Churches that still looks awesome, linked in the description, so check that out. So how did I land on this camera as my recommended choice for churches? Because the truth is, there's no perfect camera, right? No single camera that will be the right choice for every single church. So if I wanted to be more accurate, I would have made a 3-second video where you click on it, ready to hear my recommendation on the best live streaming camera for churches, and all I say is, it depends. That would be more accurate, but it would not be helpful. And it's my belief that this camera, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, is the best choice for the most churches. That does not mean it's the right choice for your church though, but if I had to choose the one camera that's the best choice for the most churches, this one would be it. So that begs the question, how do we know if this is the right one for us? And that's what you and I are gonna work through right now. One thing we won't be covering in this video though is how to set up the Pocket 4K for your live stream and its best settings and how it actually performs. If you wanna see that, we did a separate video, a live stream studio tour, because this is the camera we use in our live streams. And that is linked in the description. We've got a lot of content on church live streaming, and it's all linked in the description below. Bottom line, there are 7 reasons why I think the Pocket 4K is the best camera for the most churches. 7 things that set it apart from others. But let's first acknowledge the camera's weaknesses. Number 1, this camera does not have any in-body image stabilization or continuous autofocus capabilities. Many modern cameras do have that technology. The Pocket 4K does not. But for the purposes of a live stream, neither of those things should matter. Your camera should be on a tripod, so image stabilization won't matter, and you should not be relying on autofocus for live streaming. If you need a set it and forget it solution, autofocus is not the way to go. Instead, find your focus on stage, lock it there, and then leave it. The one feature this camera does lack that does pertain to live streaming though is a lack of auto zoom lenses. This is a cinema camera, not a camcorder. So you're not gonna be able to just press a button and have the camera's lens zoom in. You'll need to actually manually do that on the barrel of the lens. Not a big deal for me, but something to consider. Now let's get to the 7 reasons why this camera is such an outstanding monster. Number 1, affordability. At just north of $1,200 USD, this camera is accessible for many churches. And what's great about a cost-effective camera is that it leaves more money for other parts of your live stream setup, like audio, tripod, switcher, encoder, etc. Bottom line, cameras in a similar price range to the Pocket 4K don't have the same features. They just can't do as much as this little guy can. Number 2, versatility. The Pocket 4K is an exceptional live streaming camera, but it's also an exceptional cinema camera. And so this means that with just one camera, you'll be able to create basically any kind of video that you want for your church. And again, this is pretty unique to the Pocket 4K. Most cameras excel in one category, but not both. And personally, I've traveled the world with the Pocket 4K, capturing some of the most beautiful landscapes I've ever seen. Those videos get used in sermon bumpers, testimony videos, promos, openers, announcements, social, general B-roll. And then with that same camera, we're also live streaming. That's unusual. And then when you remember how little this costs, it's that much more impressive. Number 3, one benefit of shooting with a Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera is that it pairs perfectly with the rest of Blackmagic's line of live streaming equipment. As an example, we've paired the Pocket 4K in our live stream setup with the Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro, and this is a switcher from Blackmagic that has the ability to allow us to remotely control the camera from our live streaming software. We can change white balance, exposure, focus, shutter speed, ISO. We can even color grade the footage live and add audio effects like compression, EQ, and limiters to the embedded audio. And if we were using a third-party camera, that would just not be possible. And Blackmagic continues to release new firmware and updates in support of their cameras. In fact, in previous videos I've published, I've talked about all of the things I love about the Pocket 4K, but I've explicitly said, what's it not good for? Live streaming your church services. If you're gonna upload later, it's fine, but this is not a live production camera. It's not a live production camera. It's not gonna be great for live production. It's a cinema camera.
It's a cinema camera.
Until April of 2020, when Blackmagic released a firmware update that turned this camera into a full-fledged production monster. Number 4, what sets this camera apart from the rest? Another element is the form factor. Blackmagic put it right in the name, Pocket. This is a very compact camera, and my preference is to always shoot with smaller cameras. They're easier to shoot handheld when we're out in the field. They take up less space in our studio setups. When shooting interviews or testimony videos, smaller cameras are less intimidating, and they draw less attention to themselves when people are around. Not to mention, a smaller camera means I've got more room in my gear bag for other items, and I can travel lighter overall. Number 5, image quality. If you want to know about my bias on camera choices, I'm always gonna lean towards the camera that can produce the better image. And that is why I was first drawn to this camera. It can shoot 4K RAW or ProRes. The dynamic range is outstanding. And compared to many camcorders and cameras with smaller sensors, this camera will allow you to more easily capture a shallow depth of field, meaning you can blur out the background of your stage a bit and have the focus more sharply on your preacher. A larger sensor also means better low light performance, which can be helpful in church situations. This camera also allows you to input custom LUTs, so you can create a live stream that looks amazing and cinematic, which is the look that I personally love. Number 6, future-proof. This camera is already a couple of years old, and you'll be able to stick with this camera for years still. Now, obviously, when our churches are investing in camera equipment, we want to know what we're choosing to buy will still be relevant and useful for the years ahead. And while camera manufacturers continue to push the boundaries of what is possible with list specs of 8K and 12K resolution, the quality of image this camera can produce, paired with its resolution, will be more than enough for virtually any church for the next 3 to 5 years. So you can rest assured that if you chose this camera, you wouldn't need to soon replace it because it's become dated. And then number 7, the ability to record internally. So picture this, you're live streaming from this camera and it looks good, but it's still just a live stream and your data rate is being throttled a bit by your internet speed or by YouTube or Facebook's limits. And by the time people watch your video on their device, it doesn't look nearly as good as it did in camera. That's just how it goes with live production. But the Pocket 4K allows you to also record internally a separate copy of your service while simultaneously live streaming. So once the live stream is done, you can take your separate internal recording that was recorded at a much higher quality, bring it into DaVinci Resolve, a free video editing software that I recommend and use, and you could then color grade that footage and upload that to YouTube and your website as your final version of that service, and it's gonna look outstanding, much better than your live stream even could. And this requires more work, may not be something every church cares about. Again, I'm always gonna prioritize image quality myself, and this is yet another example of how capable and flexible the Pocket 4K is. Last word on this camera, it doesn't come with a lens, so if you're looking for my recommendation on glass, I'd go with the Panasonic 35 to 100mm f2.8. It's compact, it's high quality, it's future-proof, it's gonna run you about $900 USD, and will work nicely in church situations where your church is anywhere from 20 to 60 feet away from where your camera is set up. Now let's talk about a couple of other options, because there is no such thing as the perfect camera, no single solution for every church. So what are some alternatives? Well, if you liked some of the cinematic features of the Pocket 4K but need something more affordable, the Panasonic G7 is a good option. You can get it with a lens included for right around $500 USD. And then on the other side of things, if you want to go the camcorder route, because the ability to zoom in with the touch of a button and focus with a controller is a priority for your church, just know your image quality won't be as good here, which is why I don't use camcorders. But if those aforementioned features take precedent for you, the Canon G50 is a great option, right around $1,000 USD. And if you want to do an even deeper dive on live streaming camera options, check out my friend's site, joelwsmith.com. The last couple of options I shared with you came directly from his research, and no one that I know of has done more work on potential camera options and live streaming gear options as a whole than he has. That website is linked in the description, so make sure to take advantage of that. Remember, there are more live streaming videos from us to watch. Also, we got the cheapest setup that still looks awesome, linked below. The Dummy's Guide to Setting Up Your First Live Stream, linked below. And a behind-the-scenes studio tour showing you exactly how we live stream, linked below. That'll do it for this video. Do give it a thumbs up if you learned something. We'll see you next time.